It was lovely to see everybody again. I'm really happy actually that we were able to get together to have this talk today, because we're going to start, I think it's for 3 months, the second Saturday for 3 months, we're going to be doing meditation for mediumship. So we had been doing trance once a month, now we're going to actually do meditation for mediums and for mediumship. So it's really great to be able to come and talk about all of these issues, the whole medium, you know, in advance of those sessions. So hopefully you'll be able to come to those Saturdays, Saturday morning for me, but wherever you are, come along for that. So what I wanted to talk about when Wendy and I were talking about different ideas for talks, what I really was keen to talk about was the idea of the whole medium and changes in the way mediumship is being taught, and in what other silos in these areas around mediumship progress, you know, developments in those areas as well, and how mediums and mediumship can kind of begin to contribute on a greater and a wider and a broader way within different disciplines. Can I just ask really quick, is anybody here training in mediumship or working mediums?
Everyone's muted, Karen, so you'll just have to wait.
Maybe just
hand up.
Yeah, maybe if you all just raise your hand if you are a working medium.
Okay, all right. So, and is anybody else training in mediumship or any not working yet? Sally, sort of both. Yeah, so I'm just going to talk, so hopefully you'll all get something out of this, whether you're working with mediumship or not. I mean, this will also apply if you're working with healing. I mean, this will just apply to everybody as human beings anyway. But the reason why I really was keen to look at these sorts of subjects is because a lot of the time when I teach mediumship, and I've been doing it for some time, I notice that there's an awful lot of focus on messages and on details and trying to get more and more details and getting somebody's address and their name and all of this kind of stuff, which is all fantastic. But what I really do feel is that I come across an awful lot of mediums who don't have a whole program for their own self-care. So their focus is always on trying to get more details, more information, more healing for somebody outside, somebody else. And then the emphasis is not there on their own soul growth, which for me, I feel needs to be primary. Because it feels to me that from my own experience, I know that when I'm feeling calmer and more connected, I don't have to worry about asking for details in mediumship. The story just unfolds and the details just unfold, because when I'm in sort of a healthier, more all-rounded space, you just step into the flow so much more easily and just sort of become part of that. And it's not just for mediumship. I mean, it's for anything. To really be able to live in that state of connection, the first thing we need to be able to do to get there is not go off and do a bunch of courses or start doing and trying to, it's actually just to become very, very present and connected to ourselves. And that's really the first thing first place we need to be focused, I feel, in any of this. And I've noticed over the years in mediumship development, there seems to be very little emphasis on that by and large, you know, and so much more emphasis on getting information and getting details and whatnot. So the first thing, you know, before I came to mediumship, and as Wendy mentioned in my book, I talked about that whole journey, but I had actually been practicing Zen for a number of years. And I found that returning to that place of connection and that place of presence is the most valuable thing for me, just sort of living my life, for me as a writer, for me as a medium, and for me as a healer and a teacher. And the reason for that is, I'm sure any of you who have a meditation practice will know, we spend an awful lot of time future focused, which is sort of living on the periphery of anxiety, or we live back focused, which is sort of living on the periphery of regret, guilt, or remorse. But it's in that moment, in the present, and it's only in the moment, and it's only in the present, where we are fully connected to something greater than ourselves. It's like, you know, it's not a linear progression. It's almost like a spiral. You know, life is a spiral that continuously folds back on itself, where where infinity, where God, where the spirit, where eternity exists is only in the moment, which sounds a little oxymoronic, but any of you, I'm sure, who have a mediumship practice will know this, is that the place where you feel most infinite and most eternal is just in this moment and now in this moment. It's never when we're trying to get somewhere, and it's never when we're trying to shake something off. And so the best place for mediumship and for mediums, and really for anybody, is presence. And everything really, I feel, should start with presence. I know that when I'm present, you know, people always say to me, how can I tell the difference between my intuition and anxiety? You know, it's like this big question. Well, intuition is very peaceful and very calm. And so anytime there's an element or an edge or a piece of fear or a worry or a thought into next week or next year, we know that that's being driven by anxiety, right? That's the ego. It's not being driven by the spirit, which is the voice of the intuition, which is the intuition. And so the only place the place we can begin to start to listen to that intuition, to know what we need to do for ourselves and our life and our direction, is to sit and be very, very, very present, learn to be present, learn to be aware, learn to be in the moment, you know. And so we'll be looking at different ways to practice this when we do the three months, or the 3 Saturdays of mindfulness. But it's so important, and it really is transformative, any good practice. And it's not a matter of sort of sitting and trying to empty your head. I mean, you can be mindful walking around. Mindfulness is being present and being aware. I mean, how many times, in all honesty, have any of you walked out of the door, out of the house, out of the apartment, and got halfway down the road and suddenly went, wait, did I lock the door? Honestly. Lots of people do things like that. Yeah. I do it myself all the time, and I go, well, that's really good. The fact that I can't remember if I locked the door or not will go to show you that for this whole period of time, I was not present. And our lives are in the present. I mean, that's where we live our lives, right here in the moment. And so the sort of presence that comes along just sort of brings this sort of sense of peace and the sense of flow and the sense of harmony to our lives in general. But it also makes us less reactive. You know, we're also able to come back to the moment. We're also able to see where we've been pulled out of that moment of presence, where somebody has triggered us. So something from the past has now come in. They've triggered something that's some past injury, or they've triggered an anxiety we have about the future. We get better and better the more we sit and the more we find that sort of peaceful, healing place within ourselves. And this goes for working with mediumship as well. So when we're working, and a lot of you are working with mediumship, you'll find that people sit in front of you. Nobody comes to see a medium because everything is right in their world. Right? Why would you? People come to see mediums because things are not right in their world, because they are hurting, because they are grieving. And so everybody who sits in front of you is hurt in some way. And so in order not to be triggered by their hurts, because sometimes they'll come, and it's easy to deal with somebody who's hurt, who's sad, or who's teary-eyed. But when you're dealing with somebody who's hurt, whose response to hurt is anger, it's very easy to get triggered. And this doesn't go just for sitting with the bereaved. This goes for riding around in the New York City subway. Trust me, a lot of hurt and angry people in the New York City subway. We're running into this all the time, and the only way that we can retain our own sense of peace and presence is to be mindful, is to be, you know. I do a lot of work now with Tergar, with the Rinpoche, Mingyur Rinpoche there. And what he has done, for any of you who are interested, it's a really nice set of practice. It's just a way, you don't have to sit on your cushion to meditate. I practice Zen. It's very, very, very rigorous and it's very strict. But with Mingyur Rinpoche, it's just a matter of just being present in whatever you do, being present, washing the dishes, focusing on the dishes, not focusing on the future or the past, not ruminating. this is how we forget if we've locked the door, because the whole chunk of our lives we have no recollection of because we were ruminating somewhere. If we keep doing that, that's our lives have disappeared in sort of abstract rumination. We haven't been present to actually live our lives. So this is why I feel that this is the key, the starting point for all of our work on ourselves, for our own presence, for our own healing. But also it's the starting point, and should be the starting point, for all of the work we do with other people. And anybody who does psychic readings, same thing. People do not come to see psychics because all is well in their world. And it's very easy for a person who's hurt and angry to lash out at the psychic, or lash out at the healer, or lash out at the medium. And we need to be able to take that in our stride, to have compassion for their wounding, which we can only do if we've addressed our own. So I feel it's so important as mediums or healers or humans to make sure that our first focus is on healing, looking at our wounds, finding ways to heal our own wounds, finding ways to be able to be present with them, and finding ways to have compassion and kindness for ourselves first. Because most of you will admit, well, probably not publicly, but I know most of you will quietly admit that you are the last people you show compassion to. Right? Show compassion to everybody, but then we get mad at ourselves because we forgot this, we forgot that, or we said this, or we shouldn't have done. We're the worst at being kind and compassionate to ourselves, but that's the place we need to start. We cannot be compassionate and kind to other people if we are not first these things to ourselves. And so this is part of, I feel, the foundation for the whole medium, is to do that healing and have that kindness for ourselves first. Hurt people hurt. Despite our best intentions, if we are hurt, we always run the risk of hurting somebody else inadvertently. Some people do it overtly, but for most people, it's inadvertent. It's like somebody will come along, will say something or do something, or remind you of something and trigger something. If that is not healed, you're going to be triggered and you'll react. So our own inner journey and our own inner healing has to take priority before we start doing anything else. It's so much more important to do that healing on ourselves before we even start to do. Healing is a whole lifelong journey, but that should be a very fundamental part of our development and our practice when it comes to any sort of psychic or mediumship work. Even more so because when you sit with somebody and you're completely open, as you must be able to receive information from the unseen realms and to also really connect with the person in front of you, you are wide open to having some trigger, something in you triggered by them. You can't go around in a shrink wrapped, having your aura shrink wrapped onto you when you're doing this work. You have to expand and you have to invite people in. And that needs to be a safe environment for you too. We think, it's got to be a safe environment for them. It's got to be a safe environment for you. And the only way to do that is through mindfulness, through awareness of our own needs, awareness of what in ourselves needs to be healed, and then a willingness to be compassionate and kind to ourselves. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands, but I just really honestly would like you just to reflect for a moment and ask yourselves, are you your own best friends? Are you compassionate and kind to yourselves all the time? Would you talk to somebody else the way you talk to yourself in your head? And just reflect on it. You'd be amazed how often you might catch yourself saying something critical of yourself instead of being compassionate. Because everyone is really just doing the best that they can, right? And that includes you. The other thing too is that, meditation is not just, I know at the college, Wendy mentioned, I trained at the college, I've got 3 CSNUs, 3 awards from there. And they have a beautiful practice called Sitting in the Power that I learned there from Glenn Edwards, who's the late Glenn Edwards. And that's really been incorporated into spiritualist mediumship by and large. And it's a beautiful practice of connecting to yourself and connecting to the spirit. But what is often quite happens is that people use it too much to enhance their mediumship, to enhance their ability to get information, and overlooking the importance of sitting in the power of sitting in that state of mindfulness just to connect to themselves for no other purpose than just to feel that sense of blending and belonging to something greater for themselves, and that's all. It doesn't all, healers in particular seem to have this culture, oh, everything's got to be for somebody else. I can't sit in the power unless I'm sending healing to the world, because healers are always wanting to be sending healing out. And so there has to be a period of time where a healer is going to decide, make that decision for the next 5 minutes or 10 minutes. I'm going to sit here just for healing, just for me. I mean, I teach so much healing, and healers always think that's really selfish. But that's really self-care. So if any of you have a meditation or healing practice, I do encourage you to send healing to yourselves first, to receive healing for yourself first. Because not only will you be happier, will you be less triggered, will you be able to live more fully in your life, in turn, you will have that presence to be able to give gift to somebody else. And if we can't be present for ourselves, we really can't be present for somebody else. So I hope that makes sense to you. Healing is so important. I've been through some really horrendous times in my life. And I've noticed that when I was really hurting and really sick and really unwell and very depressed, and I would keep getting up and I would keep doing my sessions and I would keep pushing myself to do more and more sessions, that not only was I just burning myself out, and not only was I was taking the joy out of mediumship, but what was also happening was I was making my own mediumship incredibly difficult for myself, because when you're not well yourself, it's very hard to stay in the flow for someone else. But when you are well yourself, when you can sit with that sort of peace, when you can find that joy, all you have to do is turn your mind to the spirit world. All you have to do is extend an invitation to somebody's loved one, and they are there in the fullness of their being. And they're in the fullness of their being because you are in the fullness of your being. I've said this before, Wendy's heard me say this before. When I started off mediumship, everywhere you went, you would have a list of facts you had to get. You have to get the relationship, you have to get this, you have to get this, you have to get. It was like a shopping list of stuff that you had to get. You open a blackboard or a flipboard, or you emailed in a list, here's everything you have to get. And I often wonder to myself, if we were to go out into the world and sit down to dinner with somebody with a list of criteria for the information they had to give us over dinner, how many friends do you think we'd have? If every time we stopped at a bus stop to pass the day with somebody and we said, first of all, I want to know what your relationship is to me. Second of all, I want to know where you bought your shoes. Thirdly, I want to know how many children you have. And you go through a list of 10 items, and then you say, now what do you think about the weather? How long do you think they'd be standing at the bus stop talking to you? Right? And we do this because we're focusing outward instead of focusing inward. We're focusing, instead of being present with the person to absorb the essence and the nature of all that is said and not said of the person sitting in front of us or standing in front of us at the bus stop. When we can feel, when we really are just present and attentive and blending and open to the nature of this person in their uniqueness, how do you think that conversation would go? Right? Be very pleasant, right? That person would be far more comfortable with you. They wouldn't think you were a nutcase trying to grill them over all of these inconsequential facts. Right? There would be a flow. There would be a comfort. They would say to you what they felt like they wanted to say to you. They may even share all these little details because they don't feel threatened and backed into a corner by you. If that happens with the living, how do you think that will work for the discarnate? Same, right? I realized this after about 5 or 6 years after my mother died, my father passed away. And I sat with a medium, and it was in a demonstration. And they gave me a whole list of facts all about my mother's passing, which was 8 years prior. My father had just passed, and I was with my mother when she passed. And in the 5 years since her passing, we'd been through all of this. The thank you for the sitting at the bed and the this and that and the other. And then my father passes, and then I'm sitting in a service, and the medium comes to me and gives me a message from my mother. And what do? They just gave me the same facts at the moment that had been given to me 5 years prior. Now, how is there intelligence in that? How is there presence in that? My father had just died. Do you think the first thing my mother would want to talk about is the fact that my father had just died? Why would she be talking about old news from 5 years ago that we'd already talked about and moved on from? And again, it comes back to a medium feeling they need to get my mother's passing condition. They need to get this, they need to get this, they need to get this. Well, we'd already moved on from that for years. My mother clearly had come for a reason, and that wasn't it. So we have to acknowledge, we have to give space to that voice, to allow people to speak for themselves, to allow people incarnate or discarnate be themselves, share what they want to themselves without our ego interfering. Because our ego thinks we have to get these 10 stellar facts to look fantastic. No, we need to get 10 profound facts. We need to get what that person is choosing to say to us instead of grilling them like the person at the bus stop. I mean, why would they stick around? They'd say, oh, it's the whole day, I'm going to go find a new medium, you know. So, you know, and this again comes from dealing with the issues of our own ego. It comes from being able to be present with ourselves and the fullness and the wholeness of who we are, and experiencing from there the connection we have to something greater than ourselves. And into that beautiful energy will step somebody's loved one with the fullness of their own personality and their own story. And then we just allow them to speak. How beautiful is that? And where does it come from? It comes from turning the focus in on your own presence and your own fullness and your own life and your own healing. And that allows us to take the ego out of the way and really, you know, and just sort of be present, be reverent. There's no agenda other than to serve. It's a beautiful place to be. And it takes some work. I mean, none of us, we've all been battered around by life, right? We're all carrying around a few chips and a few wounds and a few things, a few triggers. But that's not to say that we can't focus on them and have compassion for them and heal them and get them out of the way so that we can be better people to ourselves and to others, to the incarnate and the discarnate, to the bereaved sitting in front of us, to the person in the spirit world who really just wants to say, just to be allowed to speak. Same way as the person at the bus stop would like to be allowed to speak, or you would like to be allowed to speak. I mean, wouldn't it be lovely if you suddenly find yourself in the spirit world and then you come back to your loved one here and you're able to speak through a medium, just gets out of the way, just allows you to say what you want to say, instead of making you sort of give them a laundry list of details for 15 minutes and then say thank you very much and off you go. You can get to say a word. So how is that healing for them, for you, for your sitter? Again, this beauty exists in everyone. This spirit exists in everyone. Our flaws and our faults and our wounds and our chips and our triggers all are just places within us that need our healing and our compassion, not our judgment. I'm going to ask for a raise of hands, but truthfully, how many of you judge yourself for a failing or a flaw? Or I bet you there's not a person in this room that doesn't judge themselves for something. How many friends would you have if you ran around doing that to all your friends? No? Not very many. But you can't get away from yourself, right? So you have to be a friend to yourself. But these are all just parts, all of these are opportunities for healing. These are opportunities to meditate. These are opportunities to be present. These are opportunities to seek and receive help, which is a beautiful thing. So all of these triggers, all of these wounds, all of these hang-ups, don't see them as flaws. See these as opportunities to offer up something wounded within you to receive healing. And Matt, can you already feel, I can feel the difference in the energy in the room actually, myself, just sort of sitting here. The peace that comes from just oh, is that all I have to do? You know, I don't have to go and, you know, volunteer for this, or I don't have to, you know, beat myself up, or I don't have to, you know, do morning pages every year for the next 50 years, or I don't have to, you know, all you have to do is show yourself some compassion. It sounds easy, right? It is easy. You just decide to do it. Right? You just decide. These wounds are not a flaw in my nature. They are injuries that experience in life has left me with, and they deserve my compassion and my kindness. And I am going to offer them up to the power greater than me and ask for healing and be open to receiving it. How different is that from judging yourself because you're too fat, too tall, you didn't get whatever grade, you didn't get the job promotion, you had a fight with your kid? I mean, if we were more compassionate to ourselves, can you imagine how more compassionate, if everybody in the world was compassionate towards themselves, how much compassion do you think they would be showing to other people? Wouldn't we live in a very different world? So in actual fact, you not only owe it to yourself, you owe it to humanity to be kind to yourself. Just remember, hurt people hurt, and that goes for you hurting yourself. So your first priority is to heal. Your first priority is to offer up. You don't have to go around racking your brains, trying to figure out what course can I take, what form of therapy can I do that's going to fix this. We don't have to do that. We simply offer up our pain and be willing to receive the healing. We just are present. We just show up for ourselves, and in showing up for ourselves, we're able to show up for other people. We're able to show up for that person at the bus stop without an agenda, which means we're able to show up for our loved ones, the incarnate and discarnate loved ones. And for those of you who are working mediums or training in mediumship, it allows you show up for that person who is trusting you with the message they want to give their loved one here. I mean, what a beautiful, beautiful thing is that? That somebody will come from the spirit world and trust you with their love for their loved one. So don't go grilling them. Be present with them. Be present with yourself. And then you will be able to step into the flow. And then your life, your energy, and everything about you can flow in your day-to-day business. And then it can flow when you're sitting with somebody who else who needs healing. You can sit with somebody who is bereaved, who desperately needs a message from their loved one. And the thing is that often it's overlooked. I mean, as I was talking to somebody yesterday, and her husband, partner, had come, and he was the oddest individual, I have to say. But you know, when you have a sense of peace within yourself, just to let the agenda go and let this person appear the way he knows, he decides he needs to appear to be recognized by his loved one, the person will feel their presence just the way you are present for somebody. They will feel their presence. You know, you can feel it. Whether the person in front of you has any mediumistic ability or not, they will feel the presence of their loved ones when you are present for their loved one. And to do that, you need to be present for yourself. I mean, doesn't it sound really peaceful and really, it's kind of like, it's like a relief, right? I find it to be like a relief. Oh God, that's all I have to do. I don't have to go to Omega for 2 months on end. You know, I don't have to walk on hot coals or go live in a cave with the shamans, or I just have to go out and be mindful as I take packages off the shelves. I just, you know, in the supermarket, I just have to be present when I'm parking my car. You know, I just have to be mindful of other people, mindful of myself as I move through the world. I was down at the 9/11 memorial last night, September 11th, well, everywhere here yesterday. Well, I went down to the World Trade Center, and you know, we just saw these beautiful, it was packed. bagpipers and everything, you know. But I walked down to where the actual lights are, which is not where the towers were. There's sort of a half a block further south. And I looked up, and all the birds were flying through the light. And they looked like little angels, just the light would reflect off them. Now, I'm going to say this because people are like, oh yeah, but it disorientates the birds. They've actually come up with a solution so the birds don't get exhausted and disorientated in the lights. They turn them off for 20 minutes when lots of birds accumulate, they turn off the lights and the birds disperse. They turn the lights back on. This is because apparently the birds were getting very disorientated and exhausted because we're getting trapped in the light. So that doesn't exist anymore. But when you know that the Audubon Society, the rooftop is full of volunteers watching for the birds and keeping an eye on them, so that we can both pay tribute to those who died, but also take care of the birds, you're able to just there and be present in the moment with the light and the sparks. The birds all appeared like little sparks in the light flying around. And it was the most beautiful thing. It was almost like there were like little angels flying around over this graveyard. And it was just this beautiful moment. And then I went down, I saw the bagpipers, and like everybody under 25 was just standing there with their iPhones, filming the bagpipers, you know, because that's just the way of the world now. You know? It was like being present just for the moment. It's one thing I've noticed about that when I go taking photos. I got off Facebook because every time I go taking photographs, I really feel like I'm living my life through my iPhone, rather than sticking my iPhone in my pocket and experiencing what it is I'm trying to capture and missing it, you know. Again, it's just presence. It's these tiny little things that rob us of these moments of presence. So next time you go and you think, did I lock the car? Did I lock the front door? Don't judge yourself for it. Just notice it. Be grateful to yourself. I've just noticed a moment where I wasn't aware. Well, that's lovely, because next time I'll be a little bit more aware. Because even just being aware that you weren't aware is awareness, if that makes sense. The next thing we know, we'll never forget whether we locked the door or not. You know, I had to go to a chiropractor yesterday. I ran out the door, and I live in the Bronx, so I had to go all the way down to the park to get my car, to get up to and I get in my car, and I suddenly realized, damn it, I forgot my phone. And I had to have my phone because I needed the app to be able to park in the park. And then had to come out, and I live on the up 5 flights of stairs, and I had to drive the whole way back, double park in front of the building, hope I don't get a ticket, run up 5 flights of stairs, run into the living room, and I couldn't find my phone. Do you know where it was? In my pocket. And I go, well, now there was some great level of awareness this morning, right? In my pocket. We all do it. But we have to laugh, right? It's not a matter of judgment. It's just like, you know, back out the door, down the stairs. And do you know what I thought? Well, at least I got some steps in, running up and down the stairs.
Karen, I think we might have a little break at that point to perhaps consolidate what you've been saying. Yep. I'm sure people have got lots of questions. I've got a couple of questions that people have actually passed on to me. When you say that you're a progressive medium, can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, some of the things I've been talking about already, I really feel that, you know, what I've noticed, and as you know, I'm doing a PhD, so I've been doing a lot of research I'm doing a PhD on ghost stories and phenomena, is that I find, as I've kind of moved through this world, a lot of mediumship still very much focused on holding on to sort of medieval concepts or Victorian concepts, and still very focused on, as Tony Stockwell says, being small in our mediumship. And I feel that what we're doing now is there's been so many fantastic breakthroughs, say in consciousness theories, you know, with David Chalmers' work and with Bruce Grayson, and, you know, with these people doing NDE research. There's an awful lot of work going on there, but it's almost like mediumship has remained siloed over here in its own little world of messages, when in actual fact, a lot of the people who are doing this research are not having the direct experiences that mediums are having. And so I think there's like this, so it's almost like everybody is siloed. The consciousness theory people here, the NDE people here, the mediums here. Well, the mediums are the ones with the first-hand experience, you know, and it feels to me that we really need to open up mediumship so that we're not in this silo of messages, where we can actually expand into working with people in these other silos and sort of blending all of the experimentation and the thought and the philosophy and the theories that are going on across the board when it comes to things like consciousness. I mean, I think that there's so much more in the world now that we're starting to understand about the nature of consciousness that's kind of spun off things like non-locality and physics, that we really, I think, can only benefit from being open to really experimenting and seeing how they fit and seeing how mediumship can fit in there. So I'm very much of the mind to try to break out of these sort of silos we have set for ourselves. I mean, I hope this makes sense, not too abstract.